Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Marion County Board of Commissioners meeting. It's Wednesday, January 14th, 2014. We're in the Senator Hearing Room at Courthouse Square in downtown Salem. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would join us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we begin our meeting with public comment, and we don't have anyone signed up. And it doesn't look like anyone sitting in the audience wants to give public comment, but all right, I see smiles, but nobody jumping up. So we will move immediately to our consent calendar. And whose turn is it?
I think it's mine.
Commissioner Cameron, all right.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll move the consent calendar. First item on the consent calendar, Board of Commissioners approve an order appointing Commissioner Janet Carlson and myself to the consortium of elected officials for the Mid-Willamette Jobs Council and appoint Sam Brentano as an alternate. Under Business Services, Human Resources, approve a recommendation to adjust the pay range upward for the division commander classification. Under Finance, approve a quitclaim deed to convey real property located at 14353 Manning Road in Woodburn. Under Public Works, approve a memorandum of understanding with the Oregon Building Codes Division for Marion County to continue through its building inspection program to administer the state building codes on behalf of the state. Also under Public Works, approve an order vacating certain blocks, lots, and streets within the plat of St. Louis. Under the Sheriff, approve an amendment number 1 to reduce the intergovernmental agreement by $77,650 between Marion County and the Oregon Judicial Department. And not on the agenda is to approve the victory by the Oregon State Beavers over Arizona Wildcats.
I'll certainly second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and an unsolicited agenda item, but I guess they will allow that to be in order.
Oh, I'll remove that one from the consent calendar.
All right, so those in favor of approving the consent items say aye.
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 All right, and they are approved. So we have, excuse me, 3 action items on today's agenda and no public hearings. So the first one is under Health, consider adoption of an ordinance prohibiting smoking, tobacco use, and electronic smoking device use on county property. This is a second reading for this, and we have Bruce Armstrong and Emily, how do you say your last name, Emily? DeHare, thank you. And Rod Calkins is in the audience. You're listed on the agenda, and you'll just be here if they need you. Is that right? Okay, so who's going to start?
I'll start, Commissioner. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Bruce Armstrong for the record, Assistant Legal Counsel. As you noted, this matter was brought before you 2 weeks ago for a first reading on December 31st. As background, there was a September 2nd work session with the board and departments discussing this issue, and then a management update December 15th. And that was to talk about this comprehensive ban on tobacco use on county property. What we have now in our code is a prohibition against smoking, and as of 2 weeks ago, the addition of the prohibition against the use of e-cigarettes on county property. What is before you today is a more comprehensive ordinance that would be incorporated into the code and that would prohibit any tobacco use on any county property with the exception of roads. So it would include county parks, it would include county parking lots, and any property owned or leased by the county, indoors or outdoors. So it's very comprehensive. Then the way this is laid out in the ordinance is that tobacco use is prohibited. And so it's not a ban on possession of any kind of tobacco product, but it's a ban on the use of tobacco products. And I want to add, after the first reading on December 31st, the board received a number of comments, and there were concerns about FDA-approved, that the ordinance prohibited the use of FDA-approved cessation devices or nicotine cessation devices. And we did have language in there, and I don't believe that the ordinance, as worded, did prohibit the use of those items, such as patches or gum, because they aren't tobacco-like products. But to have absolute clarity on the issue, we added, or removed and added a sentence to the definition of tobacco, use of tobacco product. And I'd like to read that just to be absolutely clear that there are two changes between the first reading and today's consideration of the ordinance, and they are the removal of a sentence regarding FDA-approved cessation devices from the definition of electronic smoking device, and the addition of this sentence to the definition of use of tobacco product. So I'm going to read the entire definition of use of tobacco product. It's in section 3, sub 5 of the ordinance. Use of tobacco product means to inhale, exhale, burn, carry, ingest, or use any tobacco product or tobacco-like product, to carry any lighted or heated product. And also, use of tobacco product includes the use or the carrying of any electronic smoking device that is turned on or producing vapor. And what has now been added is this next sentence. The term use of tobacco product does not include the use of any product specifically approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration for sale as a tobacco cessation product if the product is marketed and sold solely for the approved purpose. So that was included in a little over a week ago. That was provided to board staff. And it was on the agenda for this board session.
Bruce, let me stop you right there. Okay, so what did trigger that conversation was this front page article in Statesman Journal, January 5th, where the second paragraph said, smoking tobacco is currently barred in county buildings, facilities, and vehicles, but there are other tobacco products besides cigarettes that don't emit smoke, such as moist snuff, dissolvable strips, and tablets that county officials will likely ban next. And I saw the article on Facebook before I saw it in the newspaper, and the comments on Facebook were largely about this paragraph. So first of all, explain why it is that you think that this was actually not quite correct in the first place, but I think it provided us the opportunity to be, as you're saying, completely clear about it. So on the one hand, it triggered some public fear that maybe was not necessary. On the other hand, we may need to thank the Statesman Journal for the fact that they pointed out that maybe it wasn't entirely clear, and now we can clarify it. So,
what is true is that use of tobacco products is included, so chew and snuff that are involving tobacco is prohibited, not possession, but use of those products. What is not included is any kind of nicotine cessation device or anything like that. So why would you think in the former version of the bill it wasn't necessarily, as you're saying, necessary to change the language, but we are doing it to make it really clear? You stated at the outset you didn't think that it ever said that. I want to know why you think that. Correct, because our prohibition is against the use of tobacco, tobacco-like products, and basically e-cigarettes. And cessation devices such as gum or patches are not tobacco-like products. They're nicotine products. So they're not tobacco-based. They are solely focused on the nicotine aspect. The tobacco products are defined in the proposed ordinance to include cigarettes, cigars, pipes, and dip, chew, snuff, and snooze, and electronic smoking devices. But it doesn't get into the area of gum or patches or nicotine devices like that. But again, to be absolutely clear, if we're talking, what is being proposed is a sentence that clarifies that if a product is approved by the FDA, marketed and sold solely for the purpose of nicotine cessation, for cessation purposes, then this ordinance doesn't apply to that. So we wanted to be absolutely clear. And as you say, the comments are appreciated because it raises an issue, and we want everyone. It benefits no one if there's lack of clarity in our code or in our ordinances. So we want absolute clarity, and that's why this sentence, the sentence in electronic smoking device it included a reference to the FDA-approved devices, but it was more appropriate to have it within the excluding it from the definition of use of tobacco products.
So it might have been too narrow, putting it where it was and putting it with the broader definition of use of tobacco product makes more sense.
It's definitely more appropriate there.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you have any questions about that issue before Bruce moves on? Okay, thank you, go ahead.
So as after reading that definition of use of tobacco products, you can see it's broad. It's broader than dealing with smoking, as we have dealt with in the past, and more recently now, including electronic cigarettes. It's tobacco use, and Emily will talk in just a moment about the reasons why that broadening is sought, and our current code has a little bit of some lack of clarity about how broadly it applies with regards to county property. It's clear that you can't smoke or use an electronic cigarette currently in a building. It's clear you can't use an electronic cigarette or smoke within 10 feet of a door or window that opens. But there's some lack of clarity about in a parking lot in the grassy area in front of the health department or the juvenile department. So what we're seeking here is absolute clarity that it's if any property, county property owned or leased, is how broadly this ordinance applies. And we call out interior and exterior areas of any owned or leased building, any parking area, outdoor property or grounds, and as I mentioned earlier, it does include parks. I think there was a question about that in one of the comments to the paper, to the newspaper article. Applies to any vehicle owned or leased by the county, and because there have been questions where folks have asserted that they can smoke in their vehicle in a county parking lot, there's a provision within the ordinance that even a private vehicle on county property, the prohibition applies there as well. So again, we wanted absolute clarity. And as a part of it I think we talked last time about a transition process. This ordinance it's not requested that it be adopted by emergency procedure, so it would take effect within 90 days. We currently allow designated smoking areas. The business services director can designate certain areas where it is not, the ordinance does not apply, or the current code does not apply if you're smoking or using tobacco if you're smoking in a designated smoking area, you are not in violation of the current code. And so the way this is laid out is that process would continue until June 30th, 2015. So for even after the ordinance takes effect within 90 days, there still would be authority to have designated smoking areas until June 30th, 2015 on county property, on county campuses. In addition, on the 3 24/7 facilities, the jail, the juvenile, the juvenile campus and the public works campus, there would be an allowance because of some issues around easy access off the property, and the fact that we have employees working there 24 hours a day. There's an allowance for designated smoking areas to continue until June 30th, 2016. Again, as a way of transition. One other piece to note is that we share property, cooperatively with the transit district here at the Courthouse Square facility, and transit currently does have a designated smoking area on the north block. We have had discussions about that with transit, and we are going to continue having discussions about how transit sees moving forward on that issue. And there is a condo meeting next week, and we'll kick off some more focused discussions about how we see working cooperatively on that issue. It is a shared space. The county doesn't have the authority to designate what transit does, but we're going to have discussions about how we move forward. And as I said, as the ordinance is written, designated smoking areas are allowed at the Courthouse Square facility until June 30th of this year. So, as written, all of the county property will be smoke-free, tobacco-free. And by tobacco-free, I mean the use of tobacco products will be prohibited as of July 1, 2016. And so that's the transition piece. We'll come back to you to, the ordinance provides that the board will set the fine amount. Currently, under the code, it's a $100 fine for a violation. The ordinance would be enforced by the sheriff's office and code enforcement. Either code enforcement officers or sheriff could issue a citation, and it would go to justice court. But the main focus is about education, assistance with employees and others with cessation. And with that, I'll let Emily talk about some of those issues.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Emily DeHare, and I'm the Chronic Disease Prevention Program Coordinator up in Woodburn for the Health Department. As we discussed in the board session a couple of weeks ago, our focus at the Health Department and our tobacco prevention program would really be to partner with Marion County Wellness and other departments to really get the word out about the ordinance and set a good communication plan and implementation plan so that the rollout of this ordinance, if it was approved, would be as smooth as possible. Our role would also be to assist and really in detail explain what the resources are for staff as well as the general public if those that are interested in quitting wanted to do so. And as we know from research from the state of Oregon, we know that 70% or more of Oregonians are interested in quitting that currently use tobacco. So we know that there's a great need out there, and we really see our role as the background work to really make sure that people are clear what the ordinance means, which would include discussions with or announcements to local media, the use of social media to get that policy announced. We'd like to also get it on the website, and then we'd have multiple communications with staff through notices to let them know that these changes are coming. We have had issues in the past in different departments and locations within Marion County of issues with the Indoor Clean Air Act. So this ordinance would eliminate those issues. We have had multiple complaints through the smoke-free workplace law about tobacco or smoking within 10 feet of county properties. So this is where another piece of our the rationale about this ordinance is to really make sure that we are in full compliance with the state smoke-free workplace law, and also for consistency purposes, since we have so many state properties located in Marion County, to have consistency with the Oregon executive order that has a tobacco-free campus for state properties. We have heard from other counties who have implemented this that it is a transition because nicotine addiction is definitely strong. So this is a major change for a lot of people. But that's where our implementation and communication plans would come in to hopefully, eradicate some of those issues and make the transition a lot smoother. We've heard from other counties that have done this, that it's going well, and that staff and clients appreciate the fact that when they come to those county properties, they are no longer exposed to secondhand smoke exposure and other dangers. So we have heard fairly good compliance, although definitely there will be a lot of communication that will be needed to get it really going.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Emily, you mentioned the Oregon executive order.
Mm-hmm.
What are the similarities, or a probably easier question would be, what are the differences between what we're doing here and what the state executive order on campuses, state campuses?
There isn't a great difference, and we use the Oregon executive order as a guidance for when we created this ordinance. Electronic smoking devices are included. All state properties are included, including parking lots. For example, in City of Salem, we have the Salem Farmers Market, and that is located on a state parking lot, so that is also tobacco-free. So there aren't any great differences other than the fact that ours includes parks, and the state executive order did that at a later time. The Oregon State Parks Department did that at a later time. It wasn't included in the initial Oregon executive order.
Follow up if I may. So today, though, at Oregon State Park, they have implemented?
They have, as of, I believe, February of last year. I think it was February, they implemented their smoke-free parks policy, and the first year they served as really an educational opportunity, so they wouldn't be, the State Parks Department said that they wouldn't be issuing citations for that first year during enforcement, just to make sure that people really know and are aware of the policy, but that they would be able to do the citation if necessary the following year after implementation.
And if I might add, our current code prohibits smoking in our county parks, and I think that was initiated initially as a fire issue and less of a health concern.
Okay.
But it is currently prohibited to smoke in county parks.
Okay, so that doesn't change much, but one more is the, so from a public standpoint, I know obviously we have to educate employees, but from a public standpoint, and just take downtown Salem, there'll be consistency from a state building to a county building.
Correct.
For people, so they won't be confused with different policies.
Correct, and that's something that we could also include in our communication, is that because we have so many state properties, this would be consistent with the executive order. Our signage would definitely let the public know that it's a tobacco-free property, and the state has signs for their properties as well.
So okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So Emily, what have you heard now that the word's out more than it had been before, from employees, from management, from perhaps union representatives? Have you heard additional things from the last time we talked?
I haven't. I've just heard about the comments that were from the statesmen. I have heard that in particular, the agent or the departments that have the 24-hour operations will have the biggest challenge, but that's why they have that additional year to really get that transition period going. We have heard from staff that people are really excited about it, especially, and because I work at the health department, I hear more from health. But people are excited that they won't be exposed to secondhand smoke while going to their work site. And because those designated smoking areas would be eliminated. So right now, there's a couple of areas within the health department where people still have to walk by through the entrance to go through, and it's near the designated smoking area. So people are continually being exposed to that, and I think staff is appreciative of the fact that that will no longer be an issue for them at their workplace.
Great. We are sending out our first new and improved employee newsletter. We haven't done one for quite a while, a number of months, probably years. And it will include an article about that. I'm assuming Jolene is working with you on that to get the information out. So we'll see what else we hear.
Great, thank you.
Comments, questions?
I pretty well gave my comments last week. I'm disappointed we have to keep dealing with this issue, and as you know, I'm opposed to it for little different reasons, and apparently I'm not the only one in the community that feels that way. The nanny state that try to enforce discretionary behavior or your choices on others. And the last is that we just displace this problem somewhere yet to be found in the community. I think the ordinance we had was adequate to our needs. I very much believe in making efforts available to stop using tobacco products, but that's where it should end, not to try to force it.
Gloria, did you have?
I'd like to make a comment or ask a clarification on the new edition. The media has there have been some comments in the media about the use of e-cigarettes as smoking cessation devices, so would that be excluded or not?
Those would be excluded, so that currently there are no regulations on electronic smoking devices, and they are not approved by the FDA as a cessation device. And that would be several years down the line, if at all, because right now FDA is working on a process to just implement actual regulations on the product, and then the discussions further down the line would be if they are, after research and studies, if those would be an approved FDA device. But currently they are not an FDA approved device, so electronic devices, which includes, there are all sorts of terms for that, but vape pens, electronic cigarettes, all those devices are included in the ordinance.
So that's the importance of this language, marketed and sold solely for smoking cessation.
Correct.
And Emily told me at some point, I think it is, that the only approved cessation device or cessation products are,
The patch, the gum, and there's a lozenge as well. And in addition to medications, so there's
Some
the
pills, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? No? Want to thank you for bringing this forward. I think, I was talking to Faye Fagel, who has a 24/7 operation, and said, so have you heard about this? And what do you think about this? And she didn't seem to be that frazzled by it. I do think that anytime you go into something that's new and different, we work up language in an ordinance or an order that tries to anticipate all different kinds of variations of activities. And then as we actually get involved in implementing it, invariably we find some little thing that, boy, we didn't think of that, or this language kind of gets in the way of what we want to do. So I would encourage you to be tracking what's going on, and if you feel the need to come back and say, well, the definition didn't include X, Y, Z, and so we need to adjust that we do take a look at that. And as we move into the following year and we start with the 24/7 facilities, I mean, we've had these discussions, Bruce, as you mentioned, at several meetings, but the concept that and this is where Commissioner Brentano, I completely agree with him. We don't want to be just displacing the problem. So if people aren't actually quitting the habit, if you will, and they're just moving into their cars, or, we've got massive numbers of people out on the sidewalks along Center Street or whatever, we may want to take a look at actually what we're doing as we move into that. So we're hoping that this will be helpful to people that are not experiencing secondhand smoke, as you discussed. My sense is that snuff and chew, there's not a secondhand smoke issue, but there's certainly a health issue with cancers, and it's not real pleasant to be around someone that's chewing and spitting. I'll just say that through my own preference. But so we can anyway take a look at all of these different types of activities and see how we're doing. Beth is here, and so are we doing some through our wellness program? Are we going to be doing some education as well?
Yeah, we definitely will be, and we'll be highlighting the Marion County Incentive Program. So that's a financial incentive for staff. If they are successful in quitting, they would be refunded a certain amount of the costs associated with quitting. So we will definitely be partnering with Wellness, and Wellness has a great partnership with other departments within the county. So we'll definitely be buddying up with Beth over there.
You said buddying up?
Buddying
Okay,
up
all right.
with Beth, yeah.
Thought you were making it, never mind. So.
Oh, no.
All right. So I think we are doing a second reading. So do we read Gloria by title again, or do we, are there two motions with this that need to be done, reading by title, or do we just approve the ordinance?
You just have to make a motion. This is the second reading, so you just need to make a motion to approve the ordinance. You've reviewed the changes between the first and second reading.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll move we approve ordinance prohibiting the use of all tobacco products in Marion County buildings and on Marion County property, providing certain exemptions and repealing the provisions within the Marion County Code, Chapter 8.40.
And I will second the motion. Further discussion? I do want to commit, Commissioner, that I will never vote to prohibit ham sandwiches.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So,
I found that out of Mount Angel, too. There's a few places I'll still be able to.
right, I
function.
love ham
I'll
sandwiches.
even buy one for you.
I
If I, no, I can't.
If it's under $50, maybe, right? Expensive ham sandwich. Anyway, we're digressing. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and
Thank
keep in
you.
touch. So moving on to Public Works, consider approval of a supplemental project agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for $2,411,942.40. I always love it when they have $2 million that they add 40 cents to the end, to provide federal funding for the replacement of the Jefferson Marion Road Bridge. And Cindy Schmidt is here to present this action item.
Good morning, Commissioners. There's actually two items. This second item not mentioned yet is a second bridge replacement agreement, and I've got a PowerPoint that will go through them, and I'll take them one at a time and then answer questions. The issues this morning are whether or not to enter into an agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation to receive federal funds for the replacement of two of our bridges on county roads. And the first item deals with a bridge on Jefferson Marion Road over Marion Creek. And this vicinity map here gives you an idea of where this bridge is located in the county. It is located on Jefferson Marion Road. The bridge is actually here, very south point of the county, pretty much. This corridor between Benton County Crossing here in Jefferson up through Staten carries a fair amount of traffic, about 2,200 vehicles a day. It's a good way for commute traffic from this area to get to the Albany area without having to run into Salem and down I-5. So it sees a fair amount of long distance type travel. And so over the years, we've been replacing bridges on the corridor as they become eligible for replacement. And this is the last bridge that is in poor condition on this corridor. And we applied to get funds to replace the bridge because it is in such poor condition. It has a sufficiency rating of 30.5 on a scale of 100. And generally, when you drop below 50, your bridge is bad enough that it is going to have to be replaced as opposed to being rehabilitated in some way. So these bridges, both of these today we're talking about, are in fairly poor condition. This particular one was built in 1958, and it's on a slight horizontal curve, and you'll see some pictures coming up that kind of show the nature of the actual structure on the road. It's also located near an intersection with Plutzer Road, which is a very low volume side road, gravel road. This is a picture of the underside of the bridge, which gives you an idea of the type of structure it is. We have these wood piling, and then we have these timber caps, and then we have concrete decks sitting on top of that. And this is an example or a close-up of the kind of checking or splitting that we tend to see in piling that are of this age in this wet and dry environment. We also have significant rot showing up in some of our cap pieces. This particular bridge is in bad enough condition that earlier this year we were being required to actually load limit the structure from its normal 40 tons to something considerably lower. But we were able to go in with our bridge crew and replace a couple of the worst piling, such that we wouldn't have to post it. But we had already obtained these federal funds to replace it, so we really didn't want to put a lot of resource into it and then turn around and replace it. This is a overhead view. This is a concept drawing, certainly not a design, really, but it simply shows the structure. We have a railroad track here and their right-of-way to contend with. This is Plutzer Road. Part of our goal and to replace the bridge, we're not really planning on changing the alignment of the road. It's a fairly good alignment through the curve for drivers, but Plutzer, we want to kind of square in a little more. It comes in at a little bit of an angle. And the structure that we would put out there would be wider than the one that exists there today. And this is a pretty good picture showing how this looks from above as your driver. It's kind of not even that noticeable. All you really see is these rails, and there are a number of these on this route, so they tend to not be noticed that much. Total project cost is about $2.7 million. The local highway bridge funds would pay for just under 90% of that. The Marion County match of $276,000, that is the minimum required match. We oftentimes exceed that a little bit. And in this case, because we're a conditionally certified agency becoming certified hopefully very soon, we will be able to deliver this project ourselves. We don't have a lot of bridge design expertise in-house anymore, so we are planning to hire a consultant to do the bridge structure design itself. Our county staff will do all of the roadway design, pull it all together, and then administer and let the project for bidding, and then do all the construction support. So the timeline is, if we can execute this intergovernmental agreement now, this allows us to obligate the first portion of the federal funds for the preliminary engineering phase. We would start just a little bit this spring, getting a consultant on board and doing very, very preliminary layout of what this might look like, and then really get into the design in early 2016. We're not anticipating a lot of right-of-way for this bridge because we're not really changing the alignment, and we have a fair amount of right-of-way there, but we will probably have to obtain some construction easements, and so we'll need time to do that, and then the actual construction would happen in the summer season of 2017. So with that, I have other information on the other bridge. I don't know if you want me to continue on with that item or answer questions about this one.
Madam Chair, if I could ask just a question or two, maybe it's relative to all of them. Perhaps before you're done, Cindy, if you would discuss a little bit number of bridges in the county, just top of your head, and what their average sufficiency, even what that rating means. But on this particular structure, with the problems we had in Whipper Bridge outside Turner, fish-bearing stream, will you be spanning completely and no piling in the water? Or any thoughts that way, or have you gotten that far with design or that?
We haven't gotten that far with the design, but ideally we would always try to span it if it's feasible to do it with a structure. And this is a fairly short structure, so it should be very doable.
So, but that was my bigger question. I really forgot to ask. So how long will it be out of service? Because I can't think of a really good way to get to Corvallis, Albany, other than the freeway, especially for those residents living in that southwest corner of the county.
Yes, that's one of the design issues we'll have to work out yet, but we're considering some options that might allow us to do a little shoe fly around at the location to get vehicles around, or a partial closure. There's some different concepts out there about maybe you can build the bridge structure next to where you want it and then quickly close the road down, tear out the old bridge and slide the new one in. So there's some different concepts out there that all have to be looked at. The detours here aren't ideal, so we're going to look real hard at those options and see if we can pencil them out and make them work. So.
Okay, thank you.
But to construct a bridge like this, it could be, if we don't do a lot of alignment change, it could be 2 months type of a construction project for the meat of the bridge reconstruction. So they can go pretty fast. It's a pretty straightforward example. Compared to the next one I'll be talking about, it's a little more complicated.
And
This
a lot
one
more
should
traffic.
be fairly simple. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Yeah, Cindy, in the pictures of the actual design, it was interesting that it's concrete span but wood pylons. Is the top of the bridge newer construction than the actual pylons, or they just weren't using concrete in the design in those days on the?
This is all original construction,
Really?
and I think in that period of time, that was a very common type of construction, is to use wood pilings and then a concrete superstructure. And we have a number of those in our bridge inventory. And Commissioner Brentano asked a little bit about the number of bridges we have. We have, I believe it's 149, just we use 150 as a round figure, bridges on our county roads. And I don't know what percentage, but we have, I don't know, probably 10 or 20 at least that are this type of construction from this time period. So it's pretty typical, but there's a real variety out there. But generally this is all original construction other than the repairs we have been making in pieces of the timber caps and things. So.
One more. And then the price, the 2.688 million, and yet we don't know exactly how the design, and how do you come up with a 2.68 million, and yet we don't know exactly the process and all those types of things? Can you tell me
Certainly.
how we do that?
Yes, Commissioner. The process when we apply for funds for a bridge like this, or even if you're not asking for federal funds, you really do need to do a scoping estimate to know the magnitude of what you're going to be dealing with. And generally, we do a cost estimate that isn't terribly specific to the location, but we try to make it so and look in terms of the typical square footage prices for building bridge structures. whether there's right-of-way concerns, but we actually build a cost estimate and make assumptions about all the little pieces that go into constructing the bridge. And there's certainly amount of padding in there with contingencies because there's a lot of unknowns, because we have no survey. All we have is maybe a little data that we've collected on site and just visually what you can see. But usually we get in the pretty good ballpark, unless we run across some really odd environmental situation or some geological types of issues that we're able to pretty much hold to the kinds of prices that we originally put out. You know, you've heard, I'm sure, in the newspaper, the Eddyville project that hasn't gone real well.
Highway
given-
20.
Highway 20,
Yeah.
yes. That's an example of where you had a lot of unknown geological instability that you just couldn't foresee. And of course, it essentially made the project extremely expensive to complete and have it be done safely and well. But in this case, we've got a pretty good idea what kind of soils we're dealing with, so we're not anticipating in this environment anything unusual. This one is a fairly straightforward, so our cost estimate certainty is probably 80% anyway, that we'll be within that. We may be underneath that when we actually start building it and designing it, or we could be a little bit over. But generally, you can modify your design to try to stay within that original cost figure.
Thank you.
Do we want to move on to the bridge?
Certainly, be happy to. This second bridge is a little more complicated bridge and a little more expensive, but it's really gone through the same process of being reviewed, all our bridges, looking at some of our worst ones and submitting those that were eligible for federal funding through a grant request process. And we were fortunate to obtain funding for both of these bridges. This bridge is actually located on Silverton Road, and it's over the Little Pudding River. And as you can see here on the map, the bridge is located just a short ways east of northeast Salem area. Silverton Road itself is a very primary facility for the county road system. It's a rural principal arterial. It also happens to be on the national highway system. And this is, of course, a designated strategic route in the county. It is a freight route. This particular bridge was constructed in 1922 and then subsequently widened in 1948. So this one has, again, not necessarily all original components the same, but its condition is generally very bad. And it's got a sufficiency rating of 38.2 out of 100. It's considered both structurally and functionally obsolete because it's a little narrow for the road that it's on. This is a picture of the underside of the concrete on the bridge. And so this is a situation where the structure here, the concrete is actually poor. There's an inset here that shows a measuring device that we use to monitor whether these cracks continue to open over time. And I think in the photo, I think that's located right there. But this is one that the state inspectors who inspect the bridge regularly every 2 years had placed on it, just so we could monitor how this bridge is changing over time. This bridge is in poor enough condition that we have had to load limit it. It's currently down from 40 tons for the largest trucks, limited to a maximum of 31 tons, and even less for some of the smaller, shorter vehicles. Again, this is not really a design, not necessarily even the proposed design at this point, but it's kind of a layout, a conceptual layout, showing how the right-of-way looks out there now and the existing structure over the creek. We have, in this case, quite a bit of bank work to do. The bridge itself is fairly high over the creek. We have some homes and buildings that sit up on the up above the height of the bridge on the slope. So there's this one is a little more complicated. We also have curvature in Silverton Road we're going to have to deal with. This is a very high volume road, carries almost 11,000 vehicles a day now. The demand to build this bridge, when you build a structure like this, you're designing for a 75-year life minimum. But this road out here now, based on the traffic that uses it, we expect that it's probably going to have to go to probably a 5-lane facility in about 20 years. So we want to build the structure now such that it could be widened at some point in the future without having to be completely replaced. So there's a picture from along the road, kind of showing you the nature of the area adjacent to the roadway. This is a fairly expensive bridge, 6.3 million almost. Again, our match would be the 10.27. And on both of these bridges, our match is predominantly going to be made up of our soft staff time, our design time and contract administration time. So that it's very fortunate to be able to replace a bridge. If we had to pay that full price of the 6.3 million, it would be a lot of years of saving, be able to replace one bridge. This one's on a little bit longer time schedule. We want to get it started at the same time, and we would like to get the consultants working on both bridges at the same time. But this is a little longer design effort and probably a much longer right-of-way effort. So this would be completed in 2018, whereas the previous bridge would have been 2017. And do you have any questions about that particular bridge or agreement?
Madam Chair, if I could, Cindy, same kind of questions as the other spanning. I see it. I didn't realize what a drop it is there from that one thing you just showed. Being able to span still and detour out of service. Again, a major road. Again, no great ways to get between Salem and Silverton if this is out of service.
This one again, and we've got more work to do to figure that out. We have had to detour Silverton Road for the replacement of the bridge that's further up the road. We do have a little better alternatives for detour here. They're still not great if you're going to have it for a very long time. But again, that issue of whether we can detour or build this in phases, it will depend a lot on the whole alignment issue that has to be settled first. Because if we're putting a wider bridge in, we may be able to build it in halves. And depending on where it's going to go relative to where the existing bridge is, you might be able to keep the old one in service as long as possible and then shift traffic around a little bit. But this one's going to be a little more complicated, and it's, again, trying to minimize the amount of time that we have to interrupt that flow of traffic out there.
I didn't talk about trucks on the other, although I know there's a lot of truck activity goes on the other bridge to Gandabit and then Albany and Corvallis, but I can picture quite a lot here. And can those trucks make these detours, or do you have to have designate a new truck route between Salem and Silverton, or any issues that way?
I think for the most part, they will be able to make the detours because a lot of this is, there's a lot of big farm truck delivery type traffic going on these back roads now. But when we do a detour for a major project like this where we know we're going to be detouring trucks, one of the things we'll do is we'll go look at those other intersections they have to navigate, and we may find we need to do some minor improvements to the curve radius and stuff to make it a little
Not a
easier.
great problem anyway that you see.
I don't think so, but
Okay.
yeah, more will be determined as we get into some actual design. So.
Cindy, you said this is load limited quite a bit already.
Yes.
So what's the load limit on it now?
It's actually got a it's one of those signs where it shows depending on your vehicle configuration.
Okay.
The load limit is different. And I can't read the sign from here, but I know if there's 3 on there for a single unit truck and then a truck trailer combination and then a truck tractor semi-trailer combination. For the biggest highway truck, they normally, without permits, would be able to go up to 40 tons and travel on our public roads. We have them down to 31 tons on the bridge. For the smaller vehicles, I believe it's, I think it's like 20 or 21 tons for the small truck and then maybe 25 for the truck and trailer. So it's surprisingly not terribly impactive to the trucks that we see on this route because we don't see a lot of the really long stuff on this route.
Loaded, yeah, thank you.
For example, our own county trucks, because our shops is located here, if we're delivering sanding products in the winter or doing certain things, if we have to travel this way, we would have to reduce our loads, I think we figured by about 10 to 15% in order to be legal ourselves to go across the bridge. But generally, they're able to take an alternate route like Lard and get there and still carry full loads.
Yeah. So there's some detouring going on currently with loads like that already,
Some,
going up to
yes.
Hazel Green or wherever. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, any more questions? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and just
I'll do
make
the
mo-
first for both.
of the motions, yeah.
All right, Madam Chair, I would then make a motion that we approve 2 Agreements. One is with the Oregon Department of Transportation for $2,411,942.40 to provide federal funding for replacement of the Jefferson Marion Bridge. The second is the same, another agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation, this for $5,635,943 and get the 10 cents, to provide federal funding for the replacement of the Silverton Road Bridge over the Little Pudding River.
So what happens if we don't ever give them that last 10 cents? Do you think they'd still build the bridge?
We might have to cut out a little bit of fill, and we could save that 10 cents.
Okay. So Gloria, can we vote on these with the same would you prefer two separate votes, or does it matter?
It's fine as long as you don't expect any conflicts
Right.
to
Okay.
include it in the same motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve two different supplemental project agreements, both with the Oregon Department of Transportation, one for the Jefferson Marion Road Bridge and the other for the Silverton Road Bridge, as described with the dollar amounts as stated. Any further discussion?
Yep, Madam Chair, I just find it amazing that we're estimating, as Cindy explained, and we're down to 10 cents or 40 cents.
I know, I've made comments about this before. I think we just need to round them off.
Okay.
That's okay. All right, those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. And we're all unanimous on that. Great.
I'll bring the 40 cents for one if you'll bring the dime for the other.
Well, then I can't buy that ham sandwich.
Oh,
Very good.
Just for clarification, when we do our estimating, we're probably rounding to the nearest 10,000. It's just that when they start apportioning the federal parts by the formula, we start ending up with these odd cents. And
I think ODOT ought to pick up the 10 cents. All right. So that concludes our action items. We do not have a public hearing today on anything. So we'll move to our Wednesday to Wednesday calendar.
Thanks, Cindy.
These are items where two or more commissioners will be present for the most part. So we're just completing our board session here and the Senator Hearing Room at Courthouse Square. At 3:30 this afternoon is the Economic Development Advisory Board meeting, or EDAB, which will be held in the Commissioners Boardroom, 5th floor at Courthouse Square here in Salem. Tomorrow, Thursday, at 7:30 in the morning, is the Marion County Children and Families Commission first annual Together Towards Tomorrow meeting, I guess, conference. And they will be holding that at the Kaiser Civic Center, 930 Shamawa Road, Northeast in Kaiser. Also, on Thursday, tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. is an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602BI. That will be held in the Silverton Conference Room, which is on the 5th floor of Courthouse Square here in Salem. On Saturday, the 17th at 5 p.m. is a farewell reception for Mayor Lori Christopher and City Councilor Jim Taylor of Kaiser, and that will be held at the Kaiser Community Center, 930 Shamawa Road, Northeast in Kaiser. Tuesday, January 20th. Monday's a holiday, by the way, right? Martin Luther King Day. So we will have offices closed on Monday. And then Tuesday at 9 a.m. is an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.662D. That will be held in the Silverton Conference Room, 5th floor at Courthouse Square. Tuesday the 20th at 10 a.m. we'll have our Board of Commissioners Chief Administrative Officer meeting with an executive session if needed pursuant to ORS 192.662 A, B, D, F, and I. I think they're trying to cover all contingencies there. And that will be in the Silverton Conference Room on the 5th floor of Courthouse Square. And then on Wednesday, January 21st, we'll be back here in the Senator Hearing Room for our regular Wednesday board session at Courthouse Square in Salem. And there was one meeting, I looked through my calendar, that didn't make it on the calendar that we'll need to make sure is noticed. And that is also on Wednesday, January 21st at 12:30, and it is the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council Steering Committee meeting, and that starts at 12:30 and goes to 1:30, and it will be, I believe, in the Silverton Conference Room on the 5th floor here at Courthouse Square. So, what do you know? Anything fun?
Well, Madam Chair, I noticed that the 7:30 meeting this morning didn't happen.
Did you go there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I am not a morning person, so too many early morning. There's one tomorrow. I went to one yesterday. What did I do Monday morning? I was up early Monday morning too for whatever. Oh, it's
Yeah.
AOC. But
Yeah.
I think that there's some sort of a law enforcement conference, because
Correct.
you noticed that no law enforcement people were at our Public Safety Council meeting. So when I went home last night, because I was here at the office till almost 10, and I thought, I'm not going anywhere early tomorrow. I thought, they're probably not even having that meeting tomorrow. So my hunch was right then.
I talked to the sheriff, and he was on a run this morning, and he told me that it was
Okay.
canceled.
All right. Well, glad to know that you were Johnny on the spot. So did you have breakfast at McNary while you were there, or did
No,
you?
it was all locked up, closed.
Oh, the whole restaurant was closed?
Yeah. They only opened for that meeting on
Oh,
that special
really?
day,
I
yeah.
didn't know that. So did you go through the drive-through at McDonald's, or?
No, I had my oatmeal this morning. I was
okay.
telling Gloria about that. Good
All right.
oatmeal.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you went all the way out there and didn't find a meeting. Anything else?
Oh, no.
You doing okay?
Pardon me?
I said, are you doing all right?
Oh, I've had an interesting time at home with the daughter.
Yeah.
Appendicitis quickly, but it's all going well.
Good.
They do it different than they did in my days. What do they call it? Laparoscopic? But it's a little more than you think. I thought it was just like you just stick one thing in and dig around, pull out what you want, but they actually take 3 different devices. There's 3 holes. So it's not without its impact. A little bit funny, I could tell on that. I mentioned this to you, I guess, the other day, but we've had a family history. I would think like 30% of our relatives have appendicitis, some weakness. So I've always told my wife to watch for it. And this particular daughter, Becky, she's always. I bet there's been a dozen times. So you think this is appendicitis? No, wrong side. You need to be sick. And then she doesn't even come to me when it really is one, and talks to her mom. And finally she took her in, and it was. So what do I know? But anyway, so I was interrupted a few meetings, but everything's fine.
I'm glad to hear she's doing well.
Yeah. Could comment on the games a little bit. It was a kind of a bad day for me Monday. I don't wish anybody pain, but I've got a new team I dislike. And actually, I was at the hospital during the second half of that game, but to hear how they ran up the score and stuff, Ohio State just went off my to-like list. I think that's pretty crass. When you got it done, just call it good. Make some other statements that don't need to be made.
I know there's a lot of people depressed, and I did want to make a comment. I am
Proud of
wearing
you.
my Oregon State tie today, and it's I think it's a celebration week. There's some people depressed because the Ducks lost, and that's too bad for our state. But the Beavers beat the Arizona Wildcats on Sunday night, which nobody thought they would do. Pretty amazing.
Hey, I'm one of those. I have tickets, didn't go,
Cel-
did watch it on
celebrating.
TV, and
Yeah.
interesting.
I have over 1,100 views of my little video I posted to Facebook from that night
Wow.
of the students rushing the floor. It's like, wow.
That's pretty impressive. So my son, Justin, who lives in Dallas, Texas, and my grandson, Brandon Roy Carlson, because my son's a great Blazer fan. Roy is a family name, so it kind of worked, yeah. And I'm trying to think of the other name that they had that was absolutely wouldn't have worked, so I'm really glad that they went with that one. Anyway, they went to the game, and so my husband talked to them yesterday to see how they were doing, and Brandon, who's 6, he's getting over it. He's taking it okay, they said, so don't want to traumatize the young man at such a young age of having to experience that. But they were very excited to get to go, and Facebook pictures with their tickets and standing outside, and they had a good time.
Just looking on TV, that venue, just to be there would have
Yeah.
to be amazing. You look around at that place
Yeah.
and jumping and going like it was, that had to be special.
Looked like they had pretty good seats too, from the picture that they sent of the field. So anyway, we'll try again next year, right?
No.
Anything optimistic for the to conclude the meeting with? We're going to have another busy day. See what we're doing.
Just a little comment. The Kaiser
Right.
event Saturday should be fun, long
Yeah.
term. They've done terrific things in Kaiser. I'm going to speak a little bit. the life and the activity, well, you more than me certainly been involved with the parks and whatever they can do, the civic involvement there is just huge, and these people that we'll be honoring certainly have been part of that.
Lori and Jim are still on the fundraising committee for the big toy,
See, I
so
knew they couldn't let
I will
go.
have a chance to see them for the next several months until we build it in June, so that'll be great.
When I attended the Kaiser Chamber yesterday, and
I
and
saw
Kathy
that.
gave her state of the city, and I think the transfer of leadership up there is going to be pretty well done. So it'll be good.
Yeah, it's great.
And then
All
I
right.
was at Aurora City Council last night,
Wow.
and they were unable to swear in their new members because their county recorder was not feeling well. but-
City recorder.
City recorder, excuse me, yeah. I volunteered my services, but they said they had some legal counsel outline that in their charter, they have to have somebody special.
Somebody responsible, is that what
Right,
you
exactly. I said, well, I did some swearing in this week with the Marion County Soil and Water District, so.
I did get to swear in council mayor at Mount Angel this last week too, and that was fun. What's issues in Aurora, do you know, anything? Other than, or they didn't get to even hold a meeting?
They're working on invasive species, the Pudding River, that backs up to them. We had, our deputy was there talking about the police. There didn't seem some, one of the issues that their mayor Bill brought up was there's a bill in the legislature that they're interested in. It hasn't been filed yet on the water issue up at the Aurora Airport. So, and we're,
The drinking water issue.
yes, and
Fire.
I think Senator Gerard's working on something, and so Bill's coming down to meet with him today. So it was good to be there. I stayed for about an hour and 15 minutes, and
Great.
I was tired.
Yeah.
It was a long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
All right. Well, I think with that, we will conclude the meeting, so we are adjourned.